Welcome back to OpenLine. We are with elder law attorney Tim Takis. We're talking about if you need to care for a loved one who is aging, what are some things you can do, the high cost of nursing home care, that kind of thing. I think we had a caller who was asking about the new health care law. A lot of people are questioning that and what that's going to mean for them.
Right.
You know, what do you tell people? Are you hearing that from people?
You know, every once in a while we hear that, but I think most people realize that, I mean, people in Washington don't know.
Right.
I mean, Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, doesn't know probably from one day to the next, you know, what that bunch is going to do. You know, and if he doesn't know, it's hard to speculate. You know, I think about, you know, I remember reading I think it was a couple months ago when Speaker Boehner, remember him, you know, who retired, you know, he was asked, you know, well, what do you think the Republicans are going to do about health care? And he just laughed and he goes, you know, my party has never agreed on health care.
Right, right.
You know, and you know, I guess we're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing some members of Congress going, you know, there's some parts of this that we like, that our people like. We like the whole part about not having to, you know, get dinged for pre-existing conditions. There are other parts of it we don't like, you know, about the excessive, what's regarded as excessive interference in the health insurance market. You know, it's kind of like, well, you know, then what's going to happen? You know, I mean, really don't know.
Well, let's go to Mike. Hello, Mike.
Mike is back.
Yes, Mike, go right ahead.
Okay. We're hearing a lot out of Washington as the gentleman is addressing this whole subject of Medicare, Medicaid, on pre-existing conditions.
Yes.
And when we say pre-existing conditions, I'd like to get his opinion on how broad this could potentially be. Are we talking about all types of medical care, Alzheimer's, diabetes? Are we talking about medical operations, mental conditions? Are we talking about dental and vision? Just when you say pre-existing conditions, that could potentially cover just about everything. So in terms of what we're looking at for elder law, please give us some idea about what the government is really talking about.
Clear this up for us.
Clear this up for us. Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. Let's see what I can do.
I don't know if this is your area, but I'm interested in what you might
Well,
think.
I'm always interested in it because healthcare is a major concern for our clients. I mean, basically, you know, that's the stuff of what elder law does. People walk into our office and say, you know, I have a chronic illness, you know, I have these issues, you know, how am I going to get the care that I need? How am I going to pay for it? What does my estate planning have to do? How does that change because my wife has Alzheimer's disease? You know, all those sorts of things, you know, so it's essentially the stuff that we... Now, one of the things, of course, I always have to preface this because it's really about what I read, just like one of the things that you know, I try to read all the spectrum of, you know, not just the opinion, you know, not opinion, but like reading actually what the news is.
That's important.
Yes, it is. We know that the original American Health Care Act, or
Affordable Care Act.
I should say, you know, the one that the current administration, you know, introduced, and that was pulled from the floor of Congress before the last recess, and they, you know, the idea is that, well, we're not going to visit this again until June or July or whatever. Well, now it's sort of come back again, and what the apparently what's happened is that the so-called MacArthur Amendment, you know, which was basically to allow the states to be given options. So, you know, and addressing specifically about pre-existing conditions, some states would say, well, we want the federal government to cover pre-existing conditions. So it doesn't matter whether you have Alzheimer's disease, you know, or high blood pressure or something else. You know, state A says, you know, we opt into that system, but then there will be states that are not going to opt in. You know, but then what they would be required to do is to have high risk pools. You know, so if you are in that situation where, you know, maybe you have a, you know, high blood pressure or some chronic illness and you're seeking private health insurance, and you couldn't otherwise get it because you have that pre-existing condition, and you lived in that state where, you know, you're out of luck, you know, then the insurance company would have to, you're basically, the state would have these risk pools of money, you know, that would subsidize your premiums, for your insurance premiums.
Right, right.
Okay, now, the devil is always in the details, and we all know that when it comes to legislation, because we don't know, for as far as I know, we don't know how much those risk pools, how, you know, what the limitations are. Does the, you know, is there a co-payment? What's the premium going to be for people? Is it going to be higher than what they are paying now? Are the benefits going to be less? Because there's also the idea of, you know, the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, basically says, you know, that you cannot provide health insurance to people unless you have a certain package of, they call it essential health benefits. Well, apparently the administration proposals are whittling away at what those essential health benefits would be. So you may be paying more for less. But we don't know whether that's going to happen or not.
And you're absolutely right about the devil in the details. And I think it's an interesting question for Mike about, okay, how do you define pre-existing condition? Because everybody's saying, okay, it's going to cover pre-existing conditions, but how do you define that?
Yeah.
Is Alzheimer's a pre-existing condition?
Well, I'd say, you know, the question is maybe, yeah, if you have it now, it's going to be, it's a pre-existing, it's an existing condition.
So you can't be denied for that.
Right, currently, but I mean, if you're, you know, but maybe you're living in a state where it's a high risk pool where, you know, if this passes, you know, and the insurance company says, well, we'll insure you even though you have a, like say, a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. Maybe you're 60 years old and you have early onset, you know, and, you know, but you're going to have to pay 3 times as much, you know, even with a subsidy. I mean, we don't know. That's like what I say, that's where the devil gets into the details. You know, now, if you're an insurance company, they, you know, if they go out of business, then healthcare does not get paid for, you know, unless we come up with some other option.
Right.
You know, so it's important that the health insurance companies stay in business. You know, if we're going to, if this country is going to rely on the health insurance companies, you know, to essentially be the third-party payer. You know, which always gets back to, you know, what about, you know, well, do we need the government being a single payer? Well, nobody wants that unless you get 65 and then you're on Medicare. And then the government is the single payer.
So, all right, that's all very, that's very interesting.
It is really,
And when we're talking about estate planning and we're talking about people who come through your door, I guess what's the biggest mistake people make? In your view, let's go with estate planning. You see people that come through your door and let's say they're caring for a parent and you know, they're concerned about, is the parent going to have enough money for the nursing home? Is the parent going to have enough money to stay in their house? Are they going to be able to keep their house? What are some of the big mistakes people make?
The biggest one, you know, and this is not a surprise to you at all, and I'm sure other viewers who have, you know, we've talked about this, is planning too late.
Just not asking the questions.
You know, it's you know, it's coming in, you know, and say, well, you know, my father is in this situation or whatever, and it's like, well, when was he diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease? Well, 3.5 years ago. It's like, well, you know, you don't want to tell people, you know, you should have come in 3.5 years ago, because, you know, that's just, you know, they probably know that now, but mostly it's like, well, we didn't think it was going to be that bad. We thought we could deal with it. We figured that when a crisis came up, you know, then, you know, we would be able to do something, or we would still have options then. And that's the big thing, you know, is people losing options because they get into a situation where, you know, they're now say, okay, and let me give you an example about losing an option. All right, daddy's got Alzheimer's disease, and they're trying, but the family's trying to take care of him at home. Great. You know, they're doing the best they can. He's declining. Maybe he's had, you know, he's starting to fall, or he has fallen, you know, and now they're looking for, look, we need to find a place for daddy to go. He can't stay here. Well, can he go to an assisted living? Well, maybe not, because he could not qualify, because assisted living facilities have medical criteria. You can't just, You know, you can't just drive up to an assisted living and say, well, we can't take care of daddy at home anymore, so you're going to take him, right? They have to do a medical assessment to see whether they can meet his needs. You know, and under state law, if there are certain things that are wrong with him and they can't meet his needs under state law, they'll say he can't stay here. Now, if they had come in earlier, then he could have aged in place, and even though he had those conditions after he'd been a resident for a while, he could stay. You know, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, you know, that sometimes that's losing options. You know, because they're thinking that, well, and, you know, there's always another option to go to assisted living because there's so many of them, but like, no. You know, so that's what we see probably most, is people not making decisions when they need to.
Yeah, not asking the question, not taking the time to plan.
Yeah, exactly.
And that can really have consequences.
As we say, is hoping ain't planning. You know, hoping that something that bad's not going to happen. You know, they should hope. Yes, we all hope. You know, but hoping's not planning. So you can hope. We'll help you plan.
And there you go. All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and then I want to talk about something I always enjoy talking, wills. Okay. Talk about wills and again, more estate planning type stuff. So take a break. Be back right after this.